Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading from chapter 14, which is entitled The Modes of Material Nature. Yes. So last time we did the first 3 verses. Anyone remembers what are the main points we discussed? Yeah. Okay. Hare Krishna. What's invalid? You can call Telstra 132000. Yeah, if you try, otherwise you can call Telstra and we can. No, we can use the 4G, my 4G.
Yeah, that is saying the same thing. I have the very low network here, and this one will be not.
That is 4G, no? 4G should be better.
Yeah, but it is intermittently running up and down as well.
4G is alright, it's very good. Once you connect, it stays.
I'll
Try that. You got a password for that, no?
No, I haven't got the password.
So you won't be able to connect then.
Oh.
That's why you call 132000. They'll help you to connect. They may ask you some security questions. Huh? Sure, no? Okay. Maybe after the class we'll fix up your laptop to have that connection. Okay. So last time we did this first 3 verses. So what is the first 3? What are the first 2 verses? What is the main topic there? First 2 verses, what is the summary? Yes. And that is based on 13th chapter, text 22. Do you remember 13:22? Purusha prakritisto hi bhungte prakriti jan gunam karanam guna sangasya sad asad yoni janmashu. So you can take the mic, Mataji, and read the translation of 13:22.
Translation. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the 3 modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species.
Yeah. So this verse is talking, what is this verse talking about? Purusha prakritisto hi. Right? That means Purusha here refers to the living entity. He thinks he is the enjoyer of material nature. Material nature is for my enjoyment. And because of that, he tries to exploit the material nature. So he is called the fake Purusha, not the real Purusha. Real Purusha is only one, Purushottama, that is Krishna. But the living entity, because he is a marginal energy, he thinks I am superior to material nature. I am conscious, material nature is not conscious. She can't do anything. I can manipulate her however I like. When he tries that, we end up with earthquakes and tsunamis, and we don't know why these things are happening. Because we are trying to exploit material nature, the reaction is coming. So in 13th chapter, text 22, Krishna explains that because we are trying to attempt to lord it over material nature, we are suffering. So how the interaction of the Kshetra and Kshetragya takes place is explained in more detail in the 14th chapter. So read the translation again, Mataji, just to recap 13:22.
The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species.
So the interaction with material nature gives him the reaction. Now what that interaction is explained in detail in the 14th chapter. That means material nature means three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, ignorance. Already in the 3rd chapter we read 3:27. What is that verse? Yeah, what is the starting? Huh? Yeah. Give the mic to Dashrath Priya Prabhu. There's one there. Yes, please tell the verse. He got it first. You're there too. Prakriti.
प्रकृते क्रियमाणानि गुणे कर्माणि सर्वसा अहंकार विमूढ़ात्मा कर्ता हम इति मन्यते.
Prakriti is mentioned there again, right? Prakriti. Even here is mentioned Purusha Prakriti is Tohi. 13:22. So because of false ego, he thinks I am exploiting material nature. I can do what I want. I can control nature. I can make things the way I want it. Because of that ability to control, his thinking is that. So now, but actually what he doesn't realize that actually is being carried out by the three modes of material nature. Guna means, the guna also means rope. So when an example is given, when the cow is tied to a rope, within the length of the rope, the cow thinks I am free. Well, no one is stopping me. But when it reaches the limit of the rope, they realize, oh, I can't go further. I am not really free. So like that, the living entity, because of three modes of material nature, because of his false ego, he thinks he is the doer. He thinks I am doing things. I set my own goals. I have my own future. I can do what I want. Of course, Krishna has given us a minute degree of independence. It's not that we are totally tied up hand and leg. We have independence, but that's limited to the length of the rope. And that rope depends on this goodness, passion or ignorance. Goodness, the rope is longer. Passion is shorter. Ignorance is even more short. So depending on how the modes are acting on us, which mode we are in, Krishna is going to explain this verse, we act in a certain way. When you act in mode of passion, we act in another way. Mode of goodness, you act another way. But all the three modes are binding. So how to get out of the material modes? You have to come to Shuddha Sattva, pure goodness. That is devotion service. That's basically the gist of this chapter. Now, the details of three modes of material nature are being mentioned here because they are not visible to us. Because they are not visible to us. We don't see them obviously. And because of that, we need to be aware of them. We are not in the pure transcendental platform. We are not in pure devotion service. Therefore, we are affected by the modes. And we know how the modes are affecting us. Then we can learn how not to get caught in the three modes of material nature. How to get free from the modes. So when you're getting into the mode of passion, we know it. I'm getting in the mode of ignorance. I can detect it because I have this knowledge from this chapter. And I can pull myself out of the material modes back to the Krishna conscious platform. So it's not that devotee is always in, of course, Nitya Siddha, they're always in pure goodness. But work in progress devotee is not always above the modes. We are in the modes. And therefore being conscious of the modes and trying to constantly come back to the pure goodness is what this chapter is going to teach us. The technique of doing that. And it's very useful whether you're doing business, whether you have a relationship with your friends, with your family, in your dealings with each other, in dealings with our own Krishna consciousness, dealing with the deities, dealing with everything. We know when the modes are affecting us, how that affects our service. So our success relies on how we understand the interaction of the modes. How the Kshetra interacts with the Kshetragya. So we'll read the text 1 and 2 and 3, just the shloka and translation. And Shanmukh, you want to read the verse and we can do illustration also. You got illustration ready, right? So we'll read the translation. Maybe Jitendra can read the first one, translation, shloka and translation.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Param Bhuyah Pravakshyami
param bhuya pravakshami
Jnananam jnanamuttamam
jnananam jnana uttamam
Yagyatva munaya sarve
yagyatva munaya sarve
Param siddhim ito gataha.
titim ito gataha.
Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Again I shall declare to you this supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all the sages have attained the supreme perfection."
Very good. So here Krishna is saying this knowledge is supreme, best of all knowledge. So far whatever has been given till 13th chapter, he is going to give something higher than that. What is the higher? You are going to understand the interaction of the Kshetra and Kshetragya in detail. Okay, text number 2 was not read. Srimali Prabhu, welcome you back with text 2. Actually, no, before you go to text 2, sorry, you got your illustration. If you want, maybe you can come here. Easier if you come this side. Yeah. Got a mic for her?
First of all, I just wanted to mention how we all were so fortunate for chapter 13. It was started by Bhaktivinoda Maharaj, and the constant factor has been Prabhu, of course. The one who is keeping it going is Prabhu. Apart from him, we started the 13th chapter with the Bhaktivinoda Maharaj. In between, we had His Grace Uttama Shloka Prabhu. Then we had Geeta Kirti Mataji, and it was ended by Bhakti Rasamrit Maharaj. So wasn't that so wonderful?
Yeah.
So 13th chapter has been a very rich chapter for us with inputs from so many visiting sannyasis and devotees. And of course Prabhu all the time being there. So 13th chapter we remembered as NEC, Nature, Enjoyer and Consciousness. To remember chapter 14, I thought we can just think of it as in 14, 4 minus 1 is 3. So the 3 modes of material nature. So like that I thought it's easier to remember the 3 modes of material nature. So the illustration which I have done is like this. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, again Bhuyaha. So again he is repeating what he gave us in 13.22. So Bhuyaha, again I shall declare to you, Pravakshyami means I will tell, this supreme knowledge, Jnanam Uttamam, supreme knowledge, Uttamam, Jnanam Uttamam, the best of all knowledge, knowing which, Yad Jnatva, all the sages, Munayah Sarve Munayah, all the sages have attained, Gataha. What have they attained? The supreme perfection, Param Siddhim. So this is told by Krishna. So here is Krishna, and this is the speech bubble, what he is saying. He is saying, again, that is 13.22 repeated, I shall declare to you the supreme wisdom. So I have written wisdom as it's going smaller and smaller. So smaller, wisdom is becoming bigger, and the biggest wisdom is told to us in chapter 14. And the best of all knowledge, there's also small knowledge, and it's becoming very big, and that's the best of all knowledge. Knowing which, I've drawn all the sages here, Munaiha Sarve, all attained. What did they attain? Param Siddhim, supreme perfection. I was reminded of somehow to remember shlokas. It's nice if you connect it to some song and try to sing it and make it funny. The funnier it is, the easier it is to remember. So in school we were taught this song, Hum honge kamyab, humko honge. So like that, I was thinking, Params, what's that? Param Siddhim, supreme. We will attain supreme perfection. We will attain supreme perfection. We will attain supreme perfection one day. So we have faith. We have faith in the Lord. Like that we can make up some song that we'll attain supreme perfection one day. Like that, supreme perfection. So from now on, if we at all think of that song, we say, supreme perfection. And that comes in 14.1. So by studying 14th chapter nicely and trying to apply it in our daily life, we can get supreme perfection. Param Siddhim. So Param Siddhim ki Jai. So all of us should try to attain Param Siddhim. Thank you. That's my illustration for 14.1.
Very well.
Just try to make it silly, funny, and it's easier to remember. Because I like to laugh a lot. So those of you who like to laugh a lot will remember this shloka.
The laughing shloka. The laughter shloka. Yeah. Now actually this is very, very important chapter because we are constantly, Burijan Prabhu says, buffeted by three modes of material nature. You know what buffeting means? It's like when you are traveling by a boat or a ship. The ship is buffeted by the waves of the ocean. It's constant slapping. Smacked all the time. Buffeted by three modes of material nature. I thought it was a very appropriate analogy. Laughing is there, but the serious slap is also there. You can take your pick, which one you want to remember. But the idea is...
intimate relationship, no? Laughing and slapping. If you are having a very Aishwarya Bhav, then you want.
Yeah. So the material nature is constantly reminding us that we are not in control. And when we can observe the modes of material nature acting on us, we will become very wise. That's what the wise also have done. Okay, we'll go to text number 2. Srimani Prabhu, give the mic to Srimani Prabhu. You got one there?
Hare Krishna. Idam jnanam upashritya
Idam jnanam upashritya
mama sa dharmayam agatah
namasadharvaya agataha
sarge api nopajayante
sagoyabhyano pajayante
pralayeva na vyavthyanti cha.
alayastya gatanti cha.
By becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain to the transcendental nature like my own. Thus established, one is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution.
You got illustration for this?
I requested devotees to try to do this illustration, and Namrata Mataji, she has done an illustration. I was trying to print it out, I couldn't, but it's there. Oh, sorry. Namrata Mataji has done the illustration for 14.2. I've got it on the screen here. Can I show it like that then?
Yeah.
But then she said that illustration is for what Srila Prabhupada has said in the purport. She has illustrated this part of the purport. Those who have no knowledge of the spiritual sky hold that after being freed from the material activities of the material form, this spiritual identity becomes formless without any variegatedness. However, just as there is material variegatedness in this world, in the spiritual world there is also variegatedness. Those in ignorance of this think that the spiritual existence is opposed to material variety. But actually in the spiritual sky, one attains a spiritual form. For that she has done the illustration. You have to scroll it down and show it like that, no? Will it, can it show it fully in the screen like that? You just
You can take out the cable for time being, just make it easy. Yeah.
I don't know whether you all can see it, but then, Yeah. So she has written Bhagavad Gita as it is, 14.2, transcendental knowledge. And she has written the modes of nature, and above that there is a fence, and above that is knowledge. So this knowledge which we are given in the 14th chapter is transcending the modes. Can you see it? Yeah, the knowledge is...
Hold up it more. That better?
That is Namrata's. She is very good at drawing. She has done a course in drawing. She's very good at it.
See that?
So far she's working also, so she's been able to do 14.2. And here Prabhupada says there is in the spiritual world there is spiritual variety and spiritual qualities. So she's written that this knowledge will take us beyond birth and death. See, it's beyond. So all these are qualities here, and no birth and death. And here there is one person. There is spiritual variety, and here's another quality, spiritual variety, and another quality, spiritual variety, and these are all spiritual bodies. That is how she has illustrated that. Isn't that cute? How
Yeah.
she is illustrated? Yeah. So if she has time, she'll do more for us, and it's so nice to be engrossed in illustrating shlokas like this. See, Namrata is very good. Namrata Mataji ki
Jai.
jai.
Thank you.
Maybe we should have asked her to explain it, because
Yeah.
the artist
Is
knows
she on
what they
Mayapur
are.
TV? No. Okay.
Okay.
She may be.
Maybe not logged in. Okay. Maybe,
Okay.
yeah.
Maybe I'll call her in between and ask her what she means by this.
Yeah.
I mean, whether she wants to add more to what I said. Thank you.
So here the key word is being fixed in knowledge. Huh? What does being fixed in knowledge mean? Very good. Having realized it, and being able to apply it at any point in time. So how are we going to apply this knowledge? When I am affected by the modes, I recognize it. Yes, I'm under passion now. I'm acting out of passion. I'm in the mode of ignorance. I'm affected by mode of goodness. How they're going to affect, he's going to give more information. Krishna is going to detect when we are going into the modes and when we are transcending the modes. Even you may be doing devotional service. If you are doing it under the modes, then the offering will not be pure. For example, of course this is coming up later on anyway, but I'm just giving example. If I'm doing some service with the idea of getting a name and fame, now I'm doing service, but I'm affected by the mode of passion. I'm doing devotion service to put someone down, to show that I'm better than another person, to put someone else down. Now appears to be devotion service. That's mode of ignorance. I want to harm somebody. In mode of goodness, I'm doing this so that I don't have to suffer. I'll be happy. Where one is attached to happiness. This is also coming up later. So one is fixed in knowledge. We can examine our motivation at every point in time. And when someone says something bad to us, how we react to that. So then we know which mode is acting on me now. So we can detect. So being fixed in knowledge, as Krishna says, is that we are able to detect it very easily. And he's giving all the hints now how to detect it, and we are not affected by the modes. So when we act on the modes, what happens? We act on the material platform. When you act on the material platform, what happens? It becomes a reaction. So there's karma and vikarma going on. If you are transcendental, it's akarma. But if you're not transcendental, it will be karma or vikarma. Or within karma also goodness, passion, ignorance. So all these modes are acting on us and getting reactions. That means you're getting bound up in the cycle of birth and death. So being fixed in knowledge, Krishna is saying, you become free from the cycle of birth and death. That means at the time of creation you're not affected, at time of dissolution also not affected. Recently I think Sankarshan Maharaj, he sent a letter from his disciple, Sevananda, we were reading yesterday in Bhakti Vriksha, how his disciple, when he was hit by the earthquake, he was trying to carry his baby, and he just started chanting. Now, what happens when the earthquake and the whole building is shaking? That was 7.8 Richter. It's very massive earthquake, not a small time thing. Whole building is shaking. One is affected by fear, great fear, and one gets paralyzed by fear. Actually, I don't know if you have experienced fear, and fear is extreme. It paralyzes you. You don't know what to do. Don't know what to think even. One is completely frozen. He can't move. So, but this devotee starts chanting, and he is able to survive the earthquake. So he is saying that moment you come out of the fear is mode of ignorance. You come out of ignorance to pure goodness, immediately one is free from the modes. So that's a real life example of how being fixed in knowledge. Now he was saying, I am not fixed in knowledge. But by mercy of Gurudev, I was able to chant the holy name. So he's giving credit to his Guru Maharaj. So we need the mercy. You can't say, I got the knowledge, 14 chapter Attamaradi, I learned all the shlokas, I know everything. No, it doesn't mean you can apply it necessarily. So to apply it, we need the mercy also. So yes, we should have the knowledge, but knowledge alone is not enough. We should have the mercy of pure devotee, mercy of spiritual master. Okay, text 3, Prabhu. Microphone. You got a loud voice, but still.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Mama yonirmahad brahma
Mama yonirmahat brahma
tasmin garbham dadamyaham
tasmin garbham dadamyaham
sambhava sarvabhutanam
sambhava sarvabhutanam
tato bhavati bharata.
tato bhavati bharata.
Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki
Jai.
The total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the births of all living beings. O Sayan of Bharata.
So here is being we discussed last time. Description of Brahman is given. How Brahman, and the total material substance. What is Sanskrit word for total material substance? Mahatattva, yeah. Mahatattva is the total material substance. That diagram you see on the wall there, the spiritual nature, material world, that whole dark cloud is the Mahatattva covering. The Mahatattva covering covers the material universes. So therefore, material universe is dark. So therefore it needs sun. The sun to illuminate the dark universe. Every universe has a sun. The sun acts like the light of the whole universe. So every universe has a sun. So the Mahatattva is what is covering the whole material creation. And now when Mahavishnu enters the Mahatattva, as you can see in the picture there, and he glances on material nature, then material nature starts getting active. Action starts. What is action? Creation, maintenance, destruction. Then he himself expands as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu and enters each and every universe. When he comes in there, then the sun is there, because Brahma comes first, and then the sun is created, and so many other things are there. We'll read in the Bhagavatam. Different cantos describes all the creation process in more detail. So that's how the whole universe gets activated. So here is mentioned here that the Lord is the cause of everything. He is the source. So he impregnates the Brahman. By activating the Brahman, he is the cause of all creation, maintenance and destruction. So even though material nature is so wonderful, we should not think that's happening automatically. There is a conscious, intelligent creator behind the material nature. But that the scientists are not able to figure out. They see the material nature acting. Yeah, sure. So they see the material nature acting and they think that's happening by itself. And what example does Prabhupada give for that? A scorpion out of the bag of rice. So what does that analogy indicate? Okay. Material nature is not the source of jiva. Life doesn't come from chemicals. Life doesn't come from matter.
I like Prabhupada's argument. He says, in the past, scientists say in the past, life came from material. The material still exists. Why it is not coming now?
Yeah,
That's the best argument.
exactly. So why is it coming? Why is it not coming now? So life comes from life. Life doesn't come from matter. So the bag of rice gives birth to scorpions. Looks like the bag of rice is causing scorpion, but actually the reality is that mother scorpion has laid eggs in the bag of rice. They are hatching and they are crawling out of the bag of rice. So it's not the bag of rice that's the source of the scorpion, it's the mother scorpion. Similarly, material nature is not the cause of this creation. Actually it is Supreme Lord who is behind it. But he is not seen. We don't see him. Just like you don't see the mother scorpion that laid the eggs. Okay? Yes. Mic. You one mic, you keep it at the back.
Prabhu, in that diagram,
Yeah.
where you said Mahavishnu actually comes into the material, but what we understood is like all these personalities has got their own effulgence. So when he actually enters to this Brahma Tattva, Brahma covering,
Yeah.
why we don't see like why the material nature is not getting illuminated by
Yeah.
his effulgence?
His presence is there, but he is exhibiting his effulgence through the sun in each universe. See, he's got everything. He doesn't have the effulgence, but he is exhibiting that through the means of a sun. Just like the powerhouse is exhibiting light through this bulb. It doesn't mean the powerhouse is only in that bulb. Powerhouse is there, full power is there, but that itself is not giving the light. When you connect it to a bulb, that energy lights up. Similarly, the Lord is self-effulgent, you're right. But He chooses to illuminate each universe with the help of a sun. So Surya Dev has some service to do. So that's how that's the arrangement he has made. So everything is arranged in material nature like that. What a wonderful ecologically balanced system. Without sunlight nobody can survive. And he is the best delegator. He doesn't say, oh, I have to now be illuminating everyone. He just does it through his energies. He doesn't do it himself. But he is controlling everything. So that's why in that Hanuman Leela, when Hanuman swallows the sun, Hanuman as a baby, he swallows the sun, right? Because he thought it was a nice fruit. And then the whole universe is dark. So everyone is in confusion. So all the devatas come to negotiate with Hanuman the return of the sun. So that whole pastime takes that. So then there's a whole pastime there. The Lord has to intervene. He has to come. He has to help his devotees. The devotees have to pray to him. So the Lord, actually Prabhupada explained, the Lord intervenes in the material creation to give us an opportunity to come out of the material world. Otherwise, if we left it to us, we'll be caught here eternally. Goodness, passion, ignorance, goodness, passion, ignorance. There's no way to transcend it. There's no possibility. Because unless you engage in pure devotion service, we cannot transcend the modes. And unless you transcend the modes, you can't stop the cycle of birth and death. So therefore, the only ways when the Lord comes and intervenes in the material creation. And He does His pastimes and He pulls everyone back. So when we hear about the Lord's pastimes, we become enlivened. So this is wonderful.
Jagannath Gopal Prabhu has got a question.
Yeah.
He says he's thinking that Brahman refers to the spiritual nature. How come here Brahman refers to the material substance?
Yeah, sometimes these words are used interchangeably. Strictly speaking, Brahman is Brahma Jyoti, that's effulgence, and that is transcendental to the material world. Fact. But you see the original word says Mahatattva there. The Mahatattva is the energy of the Lord, which is covering is made up of intelligence actually. You know the 8 elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence and false ego. So intelligence is the Mahatattva. But when the Jiva comes in contact with Mahatattva, by the vehicle of Ahankara, we identify as material nature. Because of Ahankara, false ego, we identify as material nature, that I am Indian, I am African, I am black, I am white, I am man, I am woman. The Ahankara is the medium by which we identify as material nature, even though we don't belong to material nature. Yes, you can go. Yeah, can read that, yeah, please.
The answer's in the purport. It's in the 3rd sentence. The Mahat Tattva is the total cause of the total cosmic manifestation, and that total substance of the material cause, in which there are 3 modes of nature, is sometimes called Brahman.
Yeah, that's
Just another name for
another
it.
name for it. But his point is valid because there's a confusion. You don't know which one you're referring to. So sometimes it's called Brahman, sometimes it's called Mahatattva. But Prabhupada, he's quite clear because he wants to help us not get confused. So he has used Brahman to refer to Brahmajyoti and Mahatattva for the material covering. So that way we don't confuse one with the other. But that Mahatattva comes from Brahman. Yes, bro?
he elaborates on that further in the purport. This
Yeah.
total material substance, the Mahatattva, is described as Brahman in the Vedic literature, and he
Yes.
substantiates that. So.
Yeah, that's right. So the different terms may be, that's why Vedic literature sometimes they are confusing. That's why we need purport to explain all this. Otherwise you think I am Brahman, you are Brahman, everything is Brahman, we are all God. So before you know it, you are on the wrong track. That's when Acharya is required to explain all these things clearly. That unless these are explained properly, we cannot understand. So how the Supreme Lord impregnates material nature? By his glance. And the glance is personification of the glance is? Who is the personification of the glance of Mahavishnu? Shambhu or Shiva. So he comes in contact with Prakriti, material nature. He comes in contact with Parvati. Mahavishnu doesn't come in contact. He is transcendental. He stays away from it. He delegates that very effectively. That you do that job. I'm not going to get involved. That's how the Lord impregnates material nature through the agency of Lord Shiva, Shambhu. Yeah, no, yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. You can read it out anyway. Just read it out so that he also sees.
Further down the purport, it also says, the 24 elements beginning from earth, water, fire, and air are all material energy, and they constitute what is called the Mahat Brahma, or the great Brahman, the material nature. As explained in the 7th chapter, beyond this there is another superior nature, the living entity. So,
Yeah, very good.
it's being called Brahman refers to that term, Mahat Brahma.
Mahat Brahma.
That refers to the Mahat Tattva.
Mahat Tattva, yeah. Very good. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we'll go to text number 4. Oh, you got illustration number 3? Yeah, sure. Give the microphone. Jitendra, just pass the microphone. Yeah. Want me to hold it up?
Yeah, I've just written the shloka, and I tried to illustrate that point about the rice and the scorpions. So Krishna impregnates Brahman, and that gives rise to the births of all living beings. And so here is the top 2 mounds is the rice, and I put it in brown so that it's healthy rice, brown rice. Because I just couldn't leave it white, so I colored in brown there. And in the first part there is the scorpion which has laid its eggs, and in the second part the scorpions, the baby scorpions are crawling out of it. So there it shows the rice is not the cause of the scorpions, the scorpion laid its eggs. Similarly, here is material nature, though I've just put mounds like that only, just to keep the same picture so that we can remember it easily. And here is material nature. Krishna has put in the seeds, and from that all the living beings are coming
You can
out.
make it glance. Arrows, rays coming out of Krishna.
Oh, eyes, okay. I could do that. So here material nature is not the cause of the living entities. Krishna gave the seeds. So this makes it easier to remember the scorpion analogy.
Very nice. Yeah.
Thank you.
So time and again Krishna is saying the more we understand his position, the more we get free from the material world. That's what it is. The more we doubt that, the more we get entangled. Simple. Okay, thank you. Let's go to text number 4. Oh, very good. Arvind. Want to do text number 4? Use the microphone, please. So, Aditya, you hold the mic for him when he chants, and he holds the mic for you when you chant. Okay? No? You can do by yourself? A big voice. It's alright if you can do it.
सर्वयोनिषु कौन्तेय
Sarvayonishu Kaunteya
मूर्तया सम्विभान्त्या
Murtaya Sambhavantiya
तसं ब्रह्म महद्योनिर्
Tasam Brahma Mahadyoni
अहं बीजप्रदापित
Aham Bija Pratapita.
It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti are made possible by birth in the material nature, and that I am the seed giving father.
Very good. Nice reading. Both of you read very nicely. Dashrath Priya, you want to read the purport? Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. You keep one in the back, one will keep in the front. Yeah.
In this verse, it is clearly explained that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the original father of all living entities. The living entities are combination of the material nature and the spiritual nature. Such living entities are seen not only on this planet but on every planet, even on the highest where Brahma is situated. Everywhere there are living entities. Within the earth there are living entities, even within water, within fire. All these appearances are due to the mother, material nature, and Krishna's seed-giving process. The purport is the material world. The purport is that the material world is impregnated with living entities who come out in various forms at the time of creation according to their past deed.
Very good. Okay, so question here is, how does the soul come into the material world? What is the process? Yes, Mataji? Manibhushan? Huh? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, but even before that, even before you go to that, what is the first step? Even before that. Use the microphone.
Is it like we are all entities of first Brahma?
First, we are in the body of Mahavishnu.
Yeah.
When he breathes out from the pores of his body, the universe is created. And then he plants, by his glands, he plants the seeds in material nature. And material nature provides the body, and the spiritual entity, the living entity, is provided by Mahavishnu. Then the two are combined together and we get a material body. We take birth in the material world. This is different from the analysis of Bhakti-Rasamrita Maharaj. That's at a different level. How the living entity gets in more detail. But this is at this stage, text 3 and 4. You see here, text 3 talks about that the material, the Mahat Tattva, the material ingredients, our body is made up of earth, water, fire, air, ether. The 24 elements are provided by Mahavishnu. He provides the 24 elements, which makes up our body. So you may have a dog body, cat body, human body, female body, male body. So that material elements are provided by Mahavishnu. And this Mahavishnu is the cause of the material nature, and material nature provides our body. And same Mahavishnu, when he cleanses the material nature, he plants the seeds, then those jivas take the material the body and they grow in that. So just like when a child is born, the mother provides the body, the father provides the soul comes through the semen. The soul is provided by the father, but mother provides the body. Mother on her own can't give birth to a child. Similarly, the father on his own can't give birth to a child because the child needs a body, unless you make some test tube or some other arrangement. So the womb is Mother Nature, the source is Mahavishnu. But for both, the source is Mahavishnu. So that is how the soul comes into the material world. So from text 3 and 4, we can understand how the soul enters in the material world.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Then where does this we misuse the independence thing come?
Yeah.
Where
Now,
does it come?
as jivas, being part and parcel of Krishna, we have, how are we different from material nature? We are conscious, we are knowledge, and we are eternal. Material nature is temporary, full of ignorance, and not conscious. We are conscious. Material nature is not conscious. So therefore, when you are conscious, we have individuality. When you have individuality, we have likes and dislikes. And when we are conscious, we also have a minute degree of independence. Material nature has no independence. Right?
So the people
Material nature follows the laws strictly. There is no independence there. But the living entity has independence, some extent.
So the jivas who are all misuse the independence will be in the queue to jump onto the material
Back
nature.
into birth and death, cycle of birth, are bound by the cycle of repeated birth and death. But when a jiva surrenders to Supreme Lord, then he is under the spiritual nature, not under material nature anymore. And when he is under spiritual nature, then he is given more freedom. The material nature will not act in the way, obstruct him. Which verse says that? Daiveshi gunamai amaya duratya. If you don't surrender, that's what it is, duratya. But if you surrender, mamevaya prapadyante, maya metam tarantite. The material nature will make way for him. Alright, now green signal. You can do what you want. Then Yoga Maya takes over then. Mahamaya leaves and says, okay, you have passed the test, you are out of my hands. Yoga Maya takes. That's why some like Prabhupada sees. It's extraordinary achievements. At the age of 70, you can't imagine someone going and doing all this. At the age of 80, traveling around the world preaching. Not possible. Humanly, it's not possible. So then he's not under the modes of material nature. Because under the modes of material nature, they will not allow. An 80-year-old man can't do all this. It's not possible. So this is beyond the modes. So we can understand, yes, we can transcend the modes. And anyone who is following Srila Prabhupada sincerely, we can see they also have similar qualities of being transcendental. By the way, today there is a seminar in the temple at 7:30. We don't have Venti Hall program. 7:30, Janana Maharaj is giving a seminar on Srila Prabhupada. So please don't miss. Yes, Nadi? Can you use the microphone, please? Yeah. Make sure it's on.
I do understand that, but I'm a bit confused in because Mahavish, you said that at the beginning of material creation there was a Prakriti and Shiva was given that job.
That role, yeah.
Great. So what is the relation between they are creating the material nature? Is it like they're creating the material world, or they are giving birth to the souls? What is there any relation between that?
Between what? Between?
Like they were the reason to create the material creation.
The reason to create material creation, that's pretty obvious, isn't it? We already know that, because that's like you have jail. Jail. Why is jail created? To reform the criminals. So our criminal mentality is we want to be independent of Krishna. We don't want to surrender to him. So to those souls who are disobedient, he has created the material world. Okay, you can go there and try to lord it over. You get slapped. You're buffeted with 3 modes. And then you wake up and say, hang on, this is not working out somehow. This is not meant for me. I'm supposed to surrender.
They didn't give birth to any living entity, right? In that case, it's just the creation of the material.
No, giving birth in the sense, you see, what is birth? Birth means you acquire a body.
Like the body birth, yeah.
Yeah, the body is given by the material nature. Because the mother gives the body to the child, but the mother herself gets a body from material nature. The soul is always existing. The spirit soul is always existing. Either in the body of Mahavishnu in the dormant condition, or when he breathes out, the souls come out of the body and they get a suitable body according to their karma. They get a certain type of body, according to their consciousness. And those ingredients are supplied by material nature. So when we die, our body breaks down and all the material elements go back into material nature. Earth goes to earth, water goes to water, fire goes to fire. Everything goes back into the universal sink, big sink, imagine a big sink, everything is thrown into that. So it goes back and merges into everything back. A new body is born, again the material elements are gathered and you build the body. So we are drinking water, we are breathing air, Are we eating grains? Are we eating vegetables, fruits? The material nature is supplying on. That is used to make our body. So we are taking from material nature and maintain this body. And when we die, this body goes back into material nature. Everything is recycled perfectly. Perfect ecological plan. You take, and for the duration of life, you make use of material nature, whatever is supplied to you, and we make use of those things, and at the end of life, we give it back. And the spirit soul goes to another body, another mother, another womb, another birth, until it gets reformed. That makes sense? Yes, Jitan bro? Yeah? Yeah, it is scary. It is very scary. Fact. It's a fact.
I just have a question about the material body. You were saying that it's composed of the 5 material elements.
And the subtle body's got 3 elements
Right.
as well.
I can understand how the body is composed of earth, water, fire, the fire of digestion, air. Which part of the body is made of ether?
Ether is space. The space, ether is nothing but space.
The space in between
Yeah,
the
space,
organs and
yeah.
all that.
And also the fact that you occupy some space in space. Where you are sitting, no one else can get there. You have blocked that space. So you occupy space. That means we have a coordinate, x, y, z coordinates. Only to x, y, z coordinates, you are taking up space. So we have a location and we have a size. That is space.
Even the space between the two electrons is also.
So
Yeah,
ether, yeah,
that's space
yeah,
is-
or the space between the nucleus and the electron is
yeah,
also
yeah.
space.
Sure, that's right. In fact, the atom is mostly space. Even scientists agree to that. Nucleus is so small, electrons are so small, but atom is much bigger. So all that is space. So that's how yogis, mystic yogis, they are able to manipulate that space, and they are able to go under the door and through keyholes. They can get through in and out because they are able to compress the body to such an extent that they are not 5 feet tall or 6 feet tall anymore. They just compressed, all the space is taken out. They become very small and they can get in through, apparently through rock and through mountains they can get through all that. So the mystic powers are there. Ashtasiddhi is 8 types of mystic perfections. One of them is you reduce all the space, take it all out, compress to such an extent you can get through.
7-zip, better than 7-zip.
Better than 7
7-zip.
Yeah, better than 7-zip. Compressed. So that space is taken out.
So ether doesn't just refer to the substance that constitutes the sky.
No, ether is space. The sky is also part of the ether. Sky is a part of it, but the space is there, like you say, between atoms, in atoms, within, between electrons. This much space is there. So ether simply means, it's a very English is a funny language. You really can't express it properly. Ether is a very weak word, because if you talk of ether, I used to think it was some chemical, and there's something in the chemical lab, but actually it is space. The Sanskrit word is kam. Kam is space.
All this time I thought it was
The sky.
because the way it's explained, especially in classes like this, is that the sky itself is made of a certain substance that can't be found anywhere else, even down on earth. It doesn't simply refer to space in between things. It refers to a specific substance.
But what is there in the sky? Tell me. What do you see in the sky? You see clouds. And clouds are not the sky anyway. Clouds are in the sky, but clouds are not the sky.
That's what I mean.
So that's why I'm saying. So ether, the better definition is space. That makes it easy to understand. Otherwise you can't. So x, y, z coordinates. It has coordinates.
Prabhu, I think I also get confused with when they say space. Space, when they we always look of the spacecraft.
Yeah.
And that becomes the space, but it's actually a distance between the two elements, which is get filled
Yeah.
by something else. Like electron and like 2 electrons are there,
Yeah.
which are actually got something in between.
Yeah.
We cannot go further below electrons to find out what is in between that, and that particular item is referred as space, but that space is not the one which we actually look at the spacecraft or something.
Not outer space.
Not outer space. It's the space between the actual
With matter.
the matter. Yeah.
Yeah, the matter itself, you see, matter again, we think of matter is actually earth only. We don't see water as matter. Earth is one element of matter, water is another, fire is the warmth we feel. The fire is there in the wood, for example, but we don't see flames coming out of wood. We confuse fire to flame. Flame is one thing, fire is something else. Yes, flames have fire in them, but so has wood, so is our body. Anything that's warm has fire in it. Electricity is fire actually. Electricity is fire because it has ability to produce energy, the heat. So nuclear energy also is fire because that nuclear energy can run power stations, produce electricity. So nuclear energy has power in it. When you split an atom, it releases so much energy. That is fire. So there's earth, there's water, there's fire, there's air. Another way of looking at it is, see the living entities. The earthworm has got more earth in its body and less of other elements. Fish has got more water elements in it and less of fire and air. Earthworm. The earthworm goes underground. It has got more earthly body. The 5 elements are interchanged in different percentages and produce different bodies. A fish has got predominance of water. That's why Prabhupada says the living entities in the sun, because they have a fiery body. So when fire is more, you will have a fiery body. That's why Prabhupada says sterilization is bogus. You only kill some germs, yes, but there are other living entities that still exist in the fire. The scientists saying, oh, fire, once you sterilize everything, there's no life there. That's not true. Yes, Prabhupada.
Prabhu, even scientists have confirmed that there are some fire, there are some germs which can exist in the fire as well. So right. They have the fire body.
Every theory has been disproved. They have found that there are living entities that live in ammonia gas. They don't need oxygen.
Yeah, deep in the sea also, where there are actually...
They live in ammonia gas. They don't have oxygen. So therefore, that means there's no life on other planets. Is also the theory is debunked. See, everything science has said is turned completely upside down. Completely. 180 degrees. They're saying life comes from chemicals. No, life comes from life. Life doesn't come from chemicals.
Prabhu, I would like to share one thing which is very related to this. Yesterday, I was actually watching the news, and there was one lady who was actually snorkeling around a shark. And I actually remember the shloka, like, I'm among the fishes, I'm the shark.
So you're watching the news, you're Krishna conscious.
Because Prabhu, I would like to share that, it's very interesting. That is the biggest shark on the planet. It's called as a whale shark, but that is vegetarian. He actually eats just the planktons, nothing else. So that struck me, when it's the biggest shark, like it's about 15 meters in length.
Wow.
And that is purely vegetarian. He just eats the plankton all the time, and he doesn't have teeth in his mouth. So just thought of that particular shloka.
Very nice. That's a very good point. So next time, Nand Gokul loves arguments and debates. To prove Krishna consciousness. Yes, Devaki Mati, please. Thank you.
The space, even in our body, within each organ, there's so much space.
Yeah.
Like for us to even eat and digest and to excrete, we need space. Otherwise, we can't even survive.
Very good point. Yeah. Very nice point. That's why Ayurveda says your stomach should be 50% food, 25% water, and 25% air. If you fill it up 100% no water, no air, you can't digest. So we should have the stomach, we should be able to divide. So air is required, yes, that is true. That is space. So space is required, otherwise the machine can't work. Imagine putting a mixie. You fill it up so much fruit, the blades can't move. You can't rotate, it won't do anything, it can't operate. You need space to operate. Jitendra's got a question or a comment.
For living entities that live in water, they may have bodies that are composed more of water than other elements, but they're still perceptible. You can still see them in water. The same for earthworms in earth, you can still see them. Whereas with fire, there may be germs, but at least on this planet, we can't see things that exist in fire. So is that simply because we're not on the planet for that, or are entities in fire imperceptible because they're more subtle or something? Or?
Yes, they're more subtle, and our senses are not able to detect that. See, our ability of sense to detect goes down as you come down: earth, water, fire, air, ether. You come down, you see. For example, earth can activate all our senses. You can see earth, you can smell earth, you can touch earth, you can hear earth, sound can go through earth. So all senses can be activated by earth. But you come down to water, what is missing in that? Taste is gone. Taste has been taken out. When you come to earth, water, fire. Fire also not only doesn't have taste, what else does it not have? Smell it doesn't have. Then you come down to air, you can't even see it anymore. The sight has been removed. And you come to ether, only sound is there, nothing else is there. Only sound travels through space. There's no smell, there's no what do you call touch. Because air has got sense of touch, but ether, space doesn't have touch. So the senses also get the ability to detect this goes down. So fire also, your question, come back to question, we can't detect fire like a fish in water or earth in earthworm. Because the earth element is more, I can see you. If you didn't have earth element, I couldn't see you. Just if you had only fire element or air element or ether element, we can't see you. The seeing stops at the fire level. Fire is the last thing you can see. When it comes down to the next level below fire, you can't see anything.
So fire has sight, so why can't we see any entities?
Yeah, that depends on our ability to see as well. And our ability to see within fire is also limited. Not that we can see unlimitedly. Even earth also, we can't see small, like to see amoeba, you need a microscope. So you need the right device to see the living entity in fire.
So let's say there are entities, there are entities on the sun, and you'd have to have suitable eyes to see that. Is that only on that planet, or are there entities in fire in places like volcanoes?
Oh, they have so many. On the moon also there are living entities. Prabhupada said the living entities are there on the moon planet, but we can't see them. So the subtle bodies, you can't see them. Like for example, Brahma's body is not even earth, water, fire, air, ether, it's pure intelligence. How do you see intelligence? Forget air and water and fire. His body is made of intelligence. There's no way you can see that. These eyes can't detect intelligence. We need a different device for detecting intelligence.
So there could be entities that exist even in places like volcanoes, we just can't see them.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. In fact, Sarvagata, Vedas in the second chapter already Prabhupada quoted was Sarvagata, means everywhere, all pervading. So everywhere there's life, on every planet. So many scientific theories are defeated here, are made null and void, because this is completely different. The scientists won't accept it, but then again there are scientists among the scientists who are more open-minded, and they are willing to accept these things. Yeah, that's possible. We don't know really. We think this, but it's actually not true. Like if the living entities can live in ammonia, that defeats the theory that life needs oxygen. No oxygen, no life. No water, no life. That is also wrong. The living entity is in fire. So all the scientific theories are getting contradicted and defeated, debunked. Yeah. So they have a tough job now. Okay, from text 5 to 10. Sure.
When you said how our body is produced from the 5 elements, and when we die, the 5 elements go back to their original positions. And Janardhan Prabhu was saying, oh, that's scary. I was reminded of Bhakta Prabhu giving Bhagavatam class in Melbourne Temple. Bhakta Prabhu said, before coming to Krishna consciousness, he has worked in several capacities. Once he was working for a butcher who was cutting the throats of the ducks. So all day he had to just butcher the ducks. So then he came to know, oh my God, this is not good. And how his journey, like we read in Radhanath Maharaj's book, The Journey Home, so many places he went, finally he came to Krishna consciousness. So from the butcher, then he gave up that job. Then he got a job in a crematorium. And he used to work there.
And now latest, as a devotee, it seems he had to go to a crematorium. He is the interfaith minister. Chaplaincy and interfaith minister also. For he preaches to people of other religions also. He represents ISKCON and goes there to many other religious faiths. And it seems once he had to go to a crematorium because some person whom they had known had passed away, and so along with him went one very gentle devotee. That devotee was to be only in the background doing services, and he's very docile and very soft hearted. That devotee also went with him, and so they did the last rites for that dead body. And he was telling how even when they put the body in the coffin, it seems they'll decorate the body, they'll do some makeup and all for the body, and they'll put the hands together and put new clothes and all that, and they put the thing in the body, and then they will ask them, okay, do you want to chant some prayers, whichever faith you are, you chant your prayers, and then they will ask them to press that button such that the body goes inside and it'll be lit. And so this gentle devotee was standing with Bhakta Prabhu, and Bhakta Prabhu chanted all our prayers, and then he pressed that button and that thing went inside. And as it was lighting up, it seems that coffin opened up and that body stood up like that, and there is fire, and that body is standing up, and this gentle hearted devotee just looking at that, he got so scared. When Prabhu said scary, I was reminded, he got so scared that he just fell unconscious. And Bhakta Prabhu, because he was working for the crematorium, it makes you very strong hearted, because day in and day out that's your job to see that thing, and he has to make sure that the body is completely burnt. So he's strong enough and he's just standing there, and then he said, okay Prabhu, now I think we can go home. And he's turning, that Prabhu is not there. He's fallen down on the floor unconscious.
Scary.
So Bhakta Prabhu was saying, like what Maharaj said, dust to dust, and in between, like in Kannada there was one song, ಬರುವಾಗ ಬೆತ್ತಲೆ ಹೋಗುವಾಗ ಬೆತ್ತಲೆ ಹೋಗುವ ನಡುವೆ ಬರೀ ಕತ್ತಲೆ, meaning we come without any clothes, we go without any clothes, but in between we do so many things, so much darkness,
ignorance,
Mahatattva. So we have to have the knowledge of 14th chapter. So I thought I'll share with you. When Prabhu said that's so scary, I was reminded of Bhakta Prabhu's narration. Thank you.
Very sobering. Yes. Reality. Yeah, reality. When is my turn next? Yeah, and it's coming. The thing is, we know it's coming.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Can't avoid it.
Prabhu?
Yeah.
That's why when in Indian, like in our, when we actually lit the fire, they actually put a lot of wood on the chest, because that's a tendency of everybody to, when we lose all the water actually dries up when we burn. That's the tendency of everybody to, like we put something to fry, and that's what it actually shrinks. So many a times the body actually, many I've actually heard so many cases that the body actually sits, and many people have taken that, like that this person is still alive while you're burning him. He's standing up or he's sitting up, but that's actually because of the person who is putting a lot of wood on the body is not that expert. They put very heavy wood on the body, on the top part of the body, and like that's how but that's just the effect of burning. So sorry, I just mentioned it.
Not finished. Fire is there, fully burned.
Fire is there, but the body tends to bend. Our spinal cord tends to bend, and we feel that he's standing up or getting up. So, but so many people have seen run away looking at that.
Yeah,
anyway.
Scary. Again, it is scary. Yeah, that's why the more we practice Krishna consciousness, the more we are likely to not be faced with that. See, a good example Maharaj gave of Parikshit Maharaj, right? And that glorious departures. Parikshit Maharaj was able to leave his body before the snake bit him. And he is able to step into the flower aeroplane and go away. Dhruv Maharaj also, he stepped on the head of death. And then he boarded the airplane, using it as a boarding gate. So that is the Krishna conscious devotee. So the more we practice Krishna consciousness, the more we take shelter of Krishna, the more we become fixed in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, see those Indonesia, 2 boys were executed. What a way to end the life, you know. So it is horrible. Yeah. But that's what is the material nature, is very cruel. But then you read Bhagavad Gita, understand, I am a spirit soul, I am not these 8 elements. I am not earth, water, fire, air, ether. I am not mind, I am not intelligence, I am not a false ego. The spirit soul can't be burned by Nainam Chindanti Shastrani Nayandahati Pavaka. So fire can't burn. So what is being burnt is the material energy, the body, which is going to go back into the material world. But we are so attached to the body and think I am the body, it is very scary. So the more we identify ourselves as spirit soul, which can't be burned by fire. And that's why whenever there is a Shraddha ceremony, anything like that, that verse is always quoted. Nayanam Chindanti Shastrani. Everybody quotes that verse. To remind ourselves, the soul can't be burned by fire. It can't be moistened by water. Can't be withered by the wind. So they are not going to have any effect on the soul. The soul is completely transcendental. So this chapter is reminding us about that.
In Hindi, there are 2 lined verses, they are called dohas. So there is one doha in which the earth is telling the Kumbhar is the one potter who stamps on the earth and makes it soft, and then he makes pots with that. The earth is telling the potter, today you are stamping me, when you die I will stamp you. So don't be too attached to your body. It goes like this. माठी कहे कुम्हार से तू क्या रोंदे मोहे, एक दिन ऐसा आएगा मैं रूंदूंगी तो है. Kabir, yeah.
Kabir, yeah.
So Mati, the Mati is that earth. It's telling the Kumbhar, तू क्या रोंदे मोहे, you are stamping on me. एक दिन ऐसा आएगा, one day will come where I will. So don't be too attached to this body. As long you have this body, use it in Krishna consciousness and try to bring as many people to the Lord's lotus feet. Then you can exit easily. Om Kritosmara Krishna. I've tried to do something. Please think of it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So this section we are reading how the soul comes into the material world. Now the next part from text 5 to 10 we're going to read what having appeared in the material world, what binds the soul to the material world and keeps him there. How we are bound. Oh, you got 4. Okay, good. Alright.
So this is for 14.4. Sarvayonishu kaunteya murtayah sambhavanti yaha tasam brahma mahadyonir aham bija pradah pita. So I call this the seed and father shloka. Bija pradah pita. So it's easy to remember. Seed and father shloka. So here I've drawn Krishna in a very amateur way. He is the seed giving father, and the living entities are combinations of material nature and spiritual nature, and they are found in all planets. So I've drawn a few planets, big, lower and smallest. Lowest planet to the highest planet. They are found everywhere. And I've drawn how living entities are found in the earth, which is brown. Living entities like fish are found in the water, and living entities are found even in the fire. Are fireflies part of the living entities in fire? No.
We don't know the scientists do not know the species that live in fire. They have not been classified yet.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So living entities come out in various forms at the time of creation according to their past deeds. Like we read in 13th chapter, Kama and karma. Kama is their desire according to their past desires and according to their past deeds. Kama and karma. According to that we get different births.
Very good. So now having come into the material world, how the soul gets bound is the next section, text 5 to 10. We'll read text 5 today and we will not have time for more. So who is next? Balan, do you want to read?
Sattvam rajas tama iti
Tvam rajastama iti
guna prakriti sambhavaha
na prakriti sambhava
nibananti mahabaho
nibadnanti mahabaho
dehe dehinam avyayam.
dehe dehinam avyayam.
Material nature consists of three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, O mighty Arjuna, he becomes conditioned by these modes.
Okay, thank you. Purport, Yokimanchi, read the purport.
The living entity, because he is transcendental, has nothing to do with the material nature. Still, because he has become conditioned by the material world, he is acting under the spell of the three modes of material nature. Because living entities have different kinds of bodies in terms of different aspects of nature, they are induced to act according to that nature. This is the cause of the varieties of happiness and distress.
Very good. So what do you understand from this verse?
The soul is transcendental, and because he comes into contact with the material nature,
Yeah.
he is controlled by the material nature.
Yes. Via the three modes.
By three modes.
Yeah. Very good. And according to the modes we are in, we got different types of bodies as well. And thus we have experienced happiness and distress. So how the modes are going to act is now is going to be explained in terms of goodness, passion, ignorance. What is goodness, what is passion, what is ignorance? You have an illustration for this? Okay. So this is just like a header statement, like a overarching statement. Krishna is now going to introduce the three modes. What the three modes are going to be introduced from the next verse, from text 6. Krishna is going to explain the three modes. Any questions, any comments? Okay, we go to next verse then. Yeah, please. Oh, good, Ranga, please, yeah.
Tatra sattvam nirvalatvat
Sarvam nirvalatvat
prakashakam amamyaham
Prakashashamnamayam
sukha sangena badnati
Sukasangena Badnati
jnana sangena chanagha.
Sangena Chanaga.
O sinless one, the mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating, and it frees one from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode become conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge.
Very good. Excellent. So, who is there in the back? Shanti Mataji, you want to read the purport?
Hare Krishna.
The living
Done?
entity is conditioned by material
5 minutes is Prashad. This time.
by material nature or of various types. One is happy, another is very active, another is helpless. All these types of psychological manifestations are causes of the entity's conditioned status in nature. How they are differently conditioned is explained in this section of Bhagavad Gita. The mode of goodness is first considered. The effect of developing the mode of goodness in the material world is that one becomes wiser than those otherwise conditioned. A man in the mode of goodness is not so much affected by material miseries, and he has a sense of advancement in material knowledge. The representative type is the Brahmana, who is supposed to be situated in the mode of goodness. The sense of happiness is due to understanding that in the mode of goodness one is more or less free from sinful reactions. Actually, in the Vedic literature, it is said that the mode of goodness means greater knowledge and a greater sense of happiness.
Okay.
Want me to
Indians
continue?
Indians can, if Mataji can read? Emma? Can you read or you're busy? Very difficult, okay. Mataji, Avani Bushte can read. Yeah. Yes, Rishikesh wants to read.
The difficulty here is that when a living entity is situated in the mode of goodness, he becomes conditioned to feel that he is advanced in knowledge and is better than others. In this way, he becomes conditioned. The best examples are the scientist and the philosopher. Each is very proud of his own knowledge, and because they generally improve their living conditions, they feel a sort of material happiness. This sense of advanced happiness in conditioned life makes them bound by the mode of goodness of material nature. As such, they are attracted toward working in the mode of goodness, and as long as they have an attraction for work in that way, they have to take some type of body in the modes of nature. Thus, there is no likelihood of liberation or of being transferred to the spiritual world. Repeatedly, one may become a philosopher, a scientist, or a poet, and repeatedly become entangled in the same disadvantages of life, of birth and death. But due to the illusion of the material energy, one thinks that that sort of life is pleasant.
Okay. So what are the main points here?
The living entity is situated in the mode of goodness, and he becomes conditioned to feel that once he's advanced in the knowledge, he thinks he's better than others. And Prabhupada is giving example of scientist and philosopher. They have already researched and they have a lot of knowledge. So they generally think that they are more better than any other living entities, and generally improve their living conditions. But actually, they are born to the material nature, and in that situation, they are attracted only towards the working the way they are working, and they are not liberated to the spiritual. They are not liberated. They are born to be in the material world itself. So overall, I'm not sure I've given the proper.
At least you mentioned the points. So how is the mode of goodness binding?
Prabhu, the main point which I realize is like it says being purer than the others is like the best among three worst. So that's the point which we can take it as saying that we want to go past the mode of goodness as well. So that's the point.
That's right. So how is the mode of goodness binding? If you answer that question, you would have got the purport. Microphone.
Even in the mode of goodness, it brings repeated birth and death.
Yeah, that is the result of mode of goodness. How does the mode of goodness actually bind us? You're right, it is the end result. I'm talking about the before the end result. This is the result.
Because even in the mode of goodness, there is material reaction and karma.
Okay, how is that?
It is, we get bound by the happiness.
Yes, one is attached to happiness. What is your point? There is a sense of happiness in the mode of goodness, one gets attached to that. Okay, then?
And then it's also written that someone who is in mode of goodness is actually bit proud about their material knowledge.
That's right. They are proud of their learning, they are proud of their happiness, they got better standard of living. Yes, Manibhushna?
Here Prabhupada says mode of goodness is in the which is born to material nature actually.
That's
It's
all
not
material
born
nature.
to spiritually, which
Correct.
is materially,
It's
which
but
is
still
like
part of material nature.
Yeah, two parts of goodness. Like one is goodness in spiritual and one goodness in material. So people who are into material nature, where Prabhupada is explaining here, what I understand is he's saying that people who are actually doing good karma, they are not doing any bad thing for others also. They're just doing in a mode of goodness. They are always happy and they think this is the happiness.
Yeah.
So they are still born to the material nature and they are not liberated. That's
Correct.
what Prabhupada
They're
is
still
saying.
attached to the material
Yeah.
world.
So that is
Very
mode of goodness in material.
Very good. Okay. Chaitanya Prabhu, you had something to say? Okay. A false sense of complacency comes. Very good point. Yes. Mode of goodness leads to complacency. Yeah. Okay.
But we are practicing to be devotees. Mode of goodness brings us to the human level.
Very good.
Ignorance and passion, it's still in the animalistic level. Mode of goodness is where human tendencies start.
Yeah.
Having compassion for others, being forgiving by nature, being gentle, kind, appreciative,
So those
loving.
those are the positives of the mode of goodness.
Yeah, the mode of goodness.
Mm.
So
Well said.
these are all the qualities of the mode of goodness. And many times it so happens that people who are outside of ISKCON, they see some devotees, practicing devotees, work in progress devotees, who are very cruel by nature and by very brash and very harsh, and so then they feel, oh my God, if this is how it is to be Krishna conscious, I'll stay far away from it. So we are giving them the wrong impression. So in order to become devotees, first of all, we have to come to the mode of goodness. So we have to, like Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj, someone asked, I think it was in Asim Prabhu's house. They say that Krishna consciousness is a purifying process. So if I apply myself properly to this process, I should be getting all the qualities of forgiveness, tolerance, patience, blah blah blah, all that. But sometimes I see that even after applying myself, I am not getting it. So Maharaj said, you have to try to cultivate those qualities separately, because our application of this process is not so pure. Because we are work in progress devotees, I could say, I could call myself a mode of ignorance devotee sometimes, mode of passion devotee sometimes, and very rarely visit the mode of goodness devotee. So we are still struggling, so we can hardly call ourselves devotees. Vaishnava, that we have not even gone, at least I can talk for myself, can't even go very near to V of the Vaishnavi. So we're just practicing. So if we can apply what Maharaj had said, try to cultivate those qualities, as side by side do your sadhana. So then there are chances of our becoming purer and going to Shuchinam Srimatam Gehe, or if by Maha Guru Kripa we can go back to Godhead, Krishna will completely purify us and take us back. So we have to be aware that we should not be in these two modes, and when we catch ourselves in these modes, we have to, and it's very important not to give trouble to any devotee, any living entity. It's not just good enough that we are vegetarians and we are prasadatarians, but even harming another devotee emotionally, physically of course we don't do, but emotionally, psychologically, all that is also being in the mode of ignorance and passion devotees. So we have to become aware of that. So like Prabhu said, this whole chapter is teaching us what the modes are, what are the qualities of the modes, and we can detect ourselves being in those modes. Oh my God, I'm in this mode. Okay, let me get out of it.
So then mode of goodness, but then my question is, from the mode of ignorance can you transcend and go back like that, or from the mode of passion?
From any mode. One can reach Shuddha Sattva from any mode. Prabhupada picked up devotees from mode of ignorance, passion, ignorance, goodness, passion. So, first this sloka is talking about the binding nature of mode of goodness. You are talking about the good side, the need for the mode of goodness. That's a different topic. Right now we are focusing on why the mode of goodness is binding and one can't be content with the mode of goodness. Because Manibhushan Mata is making the point that some people, they do good to others, they're helping others, being good to others. That's very good, but they think they are superior to other people. So what happens when we think we're superior? Pride. What happens when you have pride? Which now we move to, from mode of goodness we come down to passion. Pride means I'm saying I'm the greatest, I'm the best, I'm better than everybody else. So the mode of goodness, not only it binds us to the material world, there's a risk that it'll if you're not taking care, it can slide down to mode of passion and passion to ignorance. And you find somebody else is better than you, then you become envious of that person. So then mode of ignorance comes in. Then you become angry, become frustrated. So first we should be aware of the binding nature of the mode of goodness, and then be aware that the mode of goodness is the default platform for a devotee. But a devotee shouldn't be so attached to mode of goodness, like Yudhishthira Maharaj said, I cannot say Ashwatthama is dead. Krishna is asking me to lie. Because so attached to mode of goodness, he would not lie for Krishna. Krishna is absolute truth, there is no question of lying. Whatever Krishna says is absolute truth. If Krishna says this is white, it is white only. I can't say it is red. I know better Krishna. That is actually red. No, we don't know anything. We arbitrarily call something red. We arbitrarily call something white. But that's nothing. It's neither red nor white. It's just a label we put on it. So what Krishna says is absolute truth. Seeing from Krishna's point of view is mode of pure goodness. So we should not get attached to mode of goodness where we start thinking that that is the supreme, that is the topmost, and that is the binding factor. And as you rightly said, mode of goodness causes complacency. So we need to be aware of goodness and use goodness to present Krishna consciousness. So when that's why we have Food for Life program. So when you give out prasadam, food distribution, oh, that is very good work. People are attracted to that. But you tell them, no, we're not giving food, we're giving prasadam. So when devotees told me, we're not vegetarians, for example. Vegetarianism is mode of goodness. We are not vegetarians. We are prasaditarians. So Krishna conscious movement is not promoting vegetarianism, rather we're promoting distribution of prasadam. And devotees get caught in this, and they go to mode of goodness and say, let's do some mode of goodness activities so we can preach better. And they forget the transcendental nature of Krishna consciousness. So this is where the balance has to come. Our behavior should be in the mode of goodness by default, but that is not the ultimate platform. Ultimate platform is to use that in Krishna's service. If goodness is not used in Krishna's service, it's a waste. Like Yudhishthira Maharaj refused to say Krishna, Ashwatthama is dead, therefore his mode of goodness failed him there. So we should not be aiming for mode of goodness. At the same time, we can't live in the mode of passion, ignorance, and Prabhu, I'm dovetailing it all. So passion, ignorance hurts, as you rightly said. But the mode of goodness is required, but we should understand it's a material mode. It is binding us to birth and death. And if we don't do that, then we will be implicated in the mode of goodness even, and that will be detrimental. First of all, you can't maintain goodness. It will always slip off. All the modes are constantly fighting with each other for supremacy. Sometimes mode of goodness dominates, sometimes mode of passion dominates, sometimes mode of ignorance. Also during the day, goodness in the morning, passion in the afternoon, and night is ignorance. So there are predominant effects are there. So unless we understand how these things are affecting us, we can get caught in one of this. And one of the classic trap of the mode of goodness is we think you're better than everybody else. And that's very dangerous. So that straight away brings us to mode of passion. So yes, what you're saying is true, that mode of goodness dealings are the default dealings. But the higher than that is the need to please Krishna. What is pleasing Krishna is actually the predominating factor. And that should be the forefront of our mind. That's why Krishna is saying, being fixed in knowledge. You can detect, I'm getting attached to mode of goodness. Even music, for example, classical music, always very nice, very soothing, relaxing. That's true. But at the same time, if you have a rock and roll Hare Krishna band, that's better than the soothing, relaxing music. rock and roll is mode of passion or ignorance. But you're chanting Hare Krishna with that is a higher platform than mode of goodness. So everything has, in relation to Krishna, we have to see that. And not get attached to one or the other. At the same time, mode of ignorance and passion should not be used. Now Lord Shiva used mode of ignorance to destroy the world for Krishna. Now we can't say Lord Shiva is in the mode of ignorance. He is not. But he is using the mode of ignorance. Brahma used the mode of passion to create. And Vishnu and the mode of goodness, which is actually pure goodness, only Lord Vishnu can maintain. No one else can maintain. If Brahma is not qualified, Vishnu can do Brahma's role. If there is no qualified Brahma, Jiva, to become Brahma, it is explained in the Bhagavatam that actually Lord Vishnu can say, alright, I'll do double role. I'm double hatting now. I'm Vishnu also, I'm Brahma also. If there is no qualified person to take that post. So mode of goodness by itself is not transcendental. Need to recognize that. At the same time, we should strive to avoid acting in mode of passion and ignorance. It's a yes, bro.
Prabhu, on this point of mode of goodness, it's most likely that we are already into some mode. Say, for example, I'm eating, say, non-vegetarian every day. It's very difficult for me to give up non-vegetarianism. So the example given is, you can slowly get away with that by eating prasada. So my question is, so my point here is, it's very difficult to cultivate the mode of goodness because there are so many different habits or things which we are afflicted to. So the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, does it bring us automatically to the mode of goodness without we consciously cultivating it?
No, Hare Krishna mantra is a transcendental sound vibration.
Yes.
It's not in the mode of goodness, it's beyond the mode of goodness.
But then will it bring the qualities of mode of goodness, because it is beyond the mode of goodness, but then a person who is transcendental has
all the good qualities. All the good
yeah.
qualities, yes. That's explained in Bhagavatam as well. Right? The one who is a devotee of the Lord, he has all the good qualities of the demigods. Sarva Sura Samasita. He's got all the good qualities of demigod. That means all the good qualities are there, mode of goodness is there. But he is using that in Krishna's service. But at times he may use the mode of passion in Krishna's service. Like Arjuna is attached to mode of goodness, he didn't want to fight. But Krishna said, you have to be in mode of passion to fight. In fact, you have to get angry to fight. Or you don't feel like fighting.
So is the chanting a remedy for bringing one to the mode of goodness?
No, it takes you beyond mode of goodness. So the devotee becomes more able to control the senses, let's put it that way. So they can use their freedom to engage in devotional service. So mode of goodness is not ultimate goal. Our problem is we are thinking mode of goodness is the ultimate. It's not, because that's what we are conditioned thinking, isn't it? In our material world, we say mode of goodness is the highest and we want to achieve that. And people like Gandhi are praised because they are in mode of goodness. And someone in mode of goodness, they are praised. But also we have heroes who fought for the country in mode of passion, they are also praised. But one who acts in mode of ignorance is not considered very great. So animals are mode of ignorance. So the chanting of the Mahamantra takes us beyond the modes of material nature. It's not, in fact it's an offense to think it's taking us to mode of goodness. It's actually offense to the holy name. That's one of the pious activities, right? Ritualistic activities, karma kanda. So it's an offense to think like that even. That's what Haridas Thakur and that Brahmana, what is his name? Chaitanya Leela. He was saying that chanting Hare Krishna will take you to heaven, Swarga. To the heaven. Not Chapal Gopal. He was the Brahmana who came to the Hiranya Majumdar's house. They had invited him. What is his name? And he was arguing that chanting Hare Krishna is very good because it brings you to mode of goodness. And Haridas Thakur said, no, it takes you beyond the mode of goodness. And then he said, no, but how can it do that? And then Haridas Thakur said, even accidental chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra can take you to the border of Vaikuntha. He said, no, that's an exaggeration. So if that's then he said, if that is true, if what he's saying is not true, I'll cut off your nose. They had a whole argument. Haridas Thakur said, if that's not Shastra says, I believe in Shastra. If Shastra is wrong, I'll cut off my own nose. And that devotee, that Brahmana ended up getting depressive and his own nose fell off. Was Chapel Gopalanand, is it? No, I don't think so. His nose fell off. He didn't have to cut his nose, he got leprosy and his nose just melted out. So it is not mode of goodness, it is beyond the mode of because it's non-different from Krishna. It's like saying Krishna is in the mode of goodness. He is not in the mode of goodness. He is Suddha Sattva, pure goodness. But as a byproduct of that, one may see the good qualities of the demigods in the person, in the devotee. That is there. But a devotee is not in the mode of goodness, he is still in the transcendental. But because we are chanting offensively, therefore we are not getting the benefit as would be expected with Shuddha Nama. Because chanting is offensive, so it's mixed. That also we'll read in the later chapters. Devotional service mixed with the modes. Yes, Shimali Prabhu?
I was just going to say that I don't know what, that because we are not able to chant, or at least, properly, so often we are chanting offensively, and hence at least the individual is able to come to the level of goodness and not come to the spiritual level, because he's not able to chant, or he's chanting offensively. So that is probably what
Yeah.
At least he's able to come, because he is basically in the mode of ignorance. He eats non-vegetarian
It is
food
not,
and
yeah,
everything
it is,
else. So
yeah. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used the term Praya Vaishnava, almost a devotee. Especially for Raghunath Das Goswami's parents, and his uncle, Hiranya Majumdar, he described them as Praya Vaishnava. Almost devotees, but they are not devotees. Because they are attracted to pious activities. Yeah.
I don't know whether it's directly related to what is being discussed. In the Varshana retreat, Japa retreat in Varshana, Burijan Prabhu and Jagatirini Mataji were conducting the retreat on how to improve our chanting. And Urmila Mataji asked this question. She said, sometimes many of the devotees' services they involve the mode of passion, like building a temple and buying the veggies, and you have to be on time for the punctuality of the service and whatever. So then the mode of passion is involved. So if a devotee's services are mostly involving the mode of passion, then how can they survive? So because it becomes passion becomes their nature, because they need that nature for their service. So then Burijan Prabhu said, that is good. You have to use the mode of passion to complete that service. But your sadhana should be very good. When you chant your 16 rounds, try to put your heart and soul into your chanting and try to do it as best as you can. Offer the best rounds to the Lord. So then you are trying to go to the Shuddha Sattva by chanting, and you are trying to call out to Krishna's mercy. And that will see you through. Krishna will see, oh, with sincerity you have chanted in the morning. So I will not allow the mode of passion to enter, but I will make you use the mode of passion to achieve all your services, to accomplish your services. Isn't that an amazing answer? I don't know whether it was connected to this point.
No, it is good. It's good. Actually, what we'll do is, coming back to your point, the three modes we're going to study in greater detail now, next few days, next few weeks. And we're going to analyze this from the point of how it is going to bind us and how it can liberate us. Okay, we'll look at both aspects of it. We need to know both sides of it. So that's why today, first aspect of mode of goodness, it is binding. Why it's binding? To summarize, we've already gone over time. So, become proud, and it gives a sense of happiness, a sense of complacency, and we get attached to it. That's how the mode of goodness binds us. How it can liberate us? If that is used in Krishna's service, engaged in Krishna's service, that can be liberating. Then you won't get attached to it. Okay? Is that alright? So we'll study in more detail. Next time is mode of passion. Next week we'll have class. The week after that we've got Rath Yatra, so we won't have class again. We'll have a few breaks like this. But anyway, it's good to have everything. A mix of everything. And then the wedding comes after that. Right? After Rath Yatra. Yeah, great. So parties and more parties. Alright, so it's getting late now. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Prabhupada ki jai. Samved Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna. Mataji, got a book?